Number 10, No Girl. There are so many gloriously strange stories when it comes to mutants' origins in the comics that just deserve some acknowledgement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. X-Men, after all, is at its best when it's part grounded in reality with mutants' everyday, usually teenage problems, part drama and end-of-the-world epic scenarios, and part ridiculousness and comedy. No Girl kind of has all of this. She is Martha Jones, a young mutant who is captured by the human supremacist group, the U-Men. The U-Men removed Martha's brain from her body and used her telepathic abilities against other mutants, keeping her drugged so she would do their bidding. Eventually, a conflict with the U-Men and X-Men allowed her to be freed, and she enrolled at the Xavier Institute, now just a floating psychic brain. Hence her name, No Girl. Number 9. Dazzler. So yes, we already got some Dazzler action in the Dark Phoenix film, for those who have seen it. But just because Dark Phoenix wasn't a box office success doesn't mean we should let Dazzler's cinematic presence fall by the wayside again. Alison Blair has always been a reluctant hero in the comics, who is often more focused on her music career than her role as an X-Men. She has been part of the team before, but her reluctance to take on a hero role, except for when she truly feels that compulsion to act on injustice or fight against imminent doom, is what makes her interesting. That reluctance, I don't know, there's something interesting about that. Her powers aren't conventional either. She can transform sound to light and works in the realm of energy manipulation. Often her light powers make her a mutant who is looked down upon or underappreciated. But she also has a passionate fan base and was once the leader of the awesome alternate reality multiversal mutant team in 2012's Extreme X-Men, which is a super fun comic, and I wish we could do that in a movie. Number 8, Jumbo Carnation. Jumbo never really had a huge role in the mutant community and was never an official X-Men, though he did make his first appearance in the early 2000s comic series New X-Men. But he's still a really interesting character. And for the fact that he was in that series, we're going to count him X-Men for the purpose of this list. Although, to be clear, he was in the series, but not really specifically on the team. Instead, Jumbo is busy with other exploits. He is a mutant fashion designer who focused primarily on designing clothes and garments for some of the more physically unusual mutants of the world. He was dead for quite a while, but has more recently popped up as the White Queen Emma Frost's personal fashion designer on Krakoa. And we can assume that he lives on the mutant island nation and probably designs clothes for, other mutants as well, who also live there. Number 7, Glob. Another strange mutant who also first appeared in New X-Men. Glob is a mutant whose skeleton and organs are completely visible due to his skin, or more outer encasing really, being composed of a transparent living wax. He is known for being good friends with Kid Omega, Quentin Quire, and was one of the mutants on Wolverine's X-Men team. There are a few mutant classes or teams I'd really love to see make their way into the MCU. One of them is Wolverine's team, and another is Spider-Man's X-Men class. I'd also just really love to see the love and respect build between Spidey and the X-Men as it has in the comics. Number 6, Lucas Bishop. Bishop isn't one of the weirdest X-Men in terms of appearance or power set. His powers allow him to absorb and convert energy, which he can then rebound to attack with or transfer into other forms of energy that his body can use. He can use absorbed energy to heal, increase his strength, or speed. Nothing too wild in the realm of mutant powers, and considering how many energy manipulators there are out there. What makes his character weird is that he's a time traveler. In fact, he's also not even from the main continuity of Earth 616, but instead hails from the alternate future belonging to Earth 1191. It's hard to introduce Bishop into a film without going into his backstory, unless you skip it and are already dealing in a doomed alternate universe like in Days of Future Past, which briefly features Bishop, although he quickly dies in that movie. But his character is so cool that it'd be worth it to get into all the alternate future timey-wimey stuff, and it would be cool to have a film featuring him and Gambit, or potentially him and Cable, because they have cool dynamics. Number 5, Brew. Can you ever have too many of the Marvel alien races and space adventures pop up in the MCU? Well, yeah, you probably can. But the Brood are such a huge and interesting threat that I really think they could fit in well to Marvel's cinematic retelling of the X-Men team's story. Especially the Brood, because the Brood and the X-Men have had a bit of a thing. Brew is an alien mutant who, you guessed it, belongs to the race known as the Brood. He is unique because he is different from all the other Brood in that he has compassion. Brood are actually known for being vicious and reveling and torturing and causing pain to others. Brew is not like that. He's also super smart and looks pretty adorable when dressed up in human clothes. Number 4, Stacy X. Disney might not be ready to explore this character's origins just yet, but then again, they have been more and more open as time has progressed to embracing non-PG content. I remember when it was shocking that they made something as violent as Pirates of the Caribbean. Does anyone remember being like, wait, that's Disney? What? Stacy X is Miranda Leevald. Last we heard she was a depowered mutant seeking for a reason to live, and she has yet to appear in the Dawn of X relaunch, but I'm hoping that we're going to see her there soon, and hopefully on the big screen as well. Stacy X had the ability to manipulate her target's pheromones via touch, allowing her to elicit physical reactions. She can make you feel terribly nauseous and vomit like crazy, or allow you to feel intense pleasure. This is what made her such a talented worker at the X Ranch, a mutant brothel. When she was powered, she also had a scaly appearance, and she ended up joining the X-Men when the X Ranch was attacked by the Church of Humanity and burned down. She also had an on and off again weird thing with Angel that I kind of liked. Number 3, Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers is another weird X-Men member because of her origins, but not necessarily from her power set or her appearance. Although her appearance is definitely unique. We probably wouldn't call it weird though, more interesting. The cool and bizarre thing about what Jonathan Hickman's Dawn of X relaunch is doing right now is it's both allowing the X-Men and mutant kind to evolve into something new, to move forward, while also acknowledging and paying tribute to their past. It's creating a mutant culture, or a mutant lore in a way. And one of my favorite things about this is that the house that the Summer family lives in now allows all kind of crazy different characters and timelines to exist under one roof, meaning that Rachel is living with main continuity Jean and Scott, who are basically alternate reality versions of her parents. In Rachel's reality, Scott and Jean got married and had one daughter, Rachel Summers. Rachel, however, can also tap into the power of the Phoenix Force, as her mother was merged with the Phoenix when she gave birth to her, making Rachel a kind of confusing but super cool and super powerful character. Just more Summers in general might be interesting because the Summer family is pretty crazy. Number 2, Phantom X. Phantom X would likely be a hard one to explain, but hey, if we can make Cable work, I'm confident that we can attempt to make almost anything work. Phantom X speaks with a French accent. He sounds French, but he claims he isn't. His nervous system can detach and become its own flying vehicle or humanoid form. Since his introduction in the comics, he's had a variety of different names attached to him. He's gone by Jean-Philippe, Charlie Cluster 7, and Weapon 13, as well as Phantom X. And his sometimes detached nervous system is often referred to as Eva. We don't know what that stands for, but I guess Grant Morrison just liked the name Eva. Let me know if you have a guess as to what Eva stands for in the comments, or if you somehow talked to Grant Morrison and figured that out. Or if you are Grant Morrison, that would be good. While Phantom X may be super confusing and weird, he's also pretty mysterious, cool, and is definitely a badass with a great character design to boot. So even though he's very strange, I'd love to see him in the MCU. Number 1, Eye-Boy. One of my favorites when it comes to the more odd category of mutants is Eye-Boy. Eye-Boy is covered in eyes, which sounds like it might be more harmful than useful. However, his eyes allow him to see all sorts of things that others can't. He has enhanced perception, not just in terms of distance and clarity of vision either. Trevor Hawkins can also use his eyes to help see things at a molecular level as well. So his eyesight also gives him an extremely closer look and better understanding at the world and its going-ons. I'd love to see Eye-Boy pop up in the MCU in some kind of detective capacity. His powers would make him a pretty good mutant detective in my opinion. Eye-Boy never gets enough respect.
And at number 10, M. Monet St. Croix was born in Sarajevo, Bosnia, and was the second daughter of a very wealthy French aristocrat. She grew up as a typical spoiled rich girl until a series of extremely unfortunate events took hold of her. First, her mother died mysteriously, just out of the blue. Then, her brother Marius turned out to be a mutant who practiced black magic and transformed her into a mute red-skinned creature called Penance. And then, she was banished to another dimension with no real way home. Oh yeah, this also happened over the course of a few days. So fast forward a little bit through crazy 90s X-Men storytelling, and Monet is back on Earth, no longer a red-skinned creature, and her mutant powers have fully manifested. What are these powers, you may ask? Well, superhuman strength, speed, agility, dexterity, reflexes, coordination, balance, vision, hearing, endurance, a genius level intellect, accelerated healing factor, supersonic flight, telekinesis, telepathy, and the ability to see mutant auras. This whole thing just kind of feels like the writers couldn't agree on one specific power, so instead of just picking one, they just threw them all on the desk and picked all of them. She was a member of Magneto's Uncanny X-Men from 2016 to 2017, which was essentially a mutant Black Ops hit squad. A perfect place for this jack of all trades. In at number 9, Age of Apocalypse Magneto. Let's get this out of the way immediately. Age of Apocalypse is weird, really weird. For some reason, it's regarded as one of the best alternate timeline stories ever, but have you ever actually read the entire run? Because I did, and it's 90s as and that's not a good thing. But one of the best things to come out of this alternate timeline story is Eric Lehnsherr, aka Magneto, aka founder and leader of the X-Men. Yeah, that's right. Let me explain how we got here. So do you remember Legion from part 1 of this list? Well, one time, he decided it would be a great idea to go back in time and murder Magneto in order to get rid of the X-Men's greatest foe before he even became a threat. Things didn't really go to plan because Legion ended up killing his dad, Xavier, and erased himself along with his entire timeline from history. See? 90s is f***. In a world without Professor X, Apocalypse rose to power, and Magneto had to create his own X-Men to oppose him. Years of living as a rebel and constantly on the run from Apocalypse's armies molded this Magneto into one of the biggest badasses Marvel has ever seen. He eventually takes on Apocalypse in a one-on-one duel to the death, and rips Apocalypse in half using the iron in Apocalypse's blood. 90s is f***. In at number 8, Polaris. Lorna Dane is the daughter of Magneto, and with great power comes great magnetism. Much like her father, Polaris has the power of electromagnetic manipulation, and is just as powerful as her dad in many regards, but one moment in particular made her one of the most OP mutants of all time. During the Last Days part of the 2015 Secret Wars storyline, the Ultimate Universe's Earth was on a collision course with the 616 Universe's Earth. If they collided, both would be destroyed, killing all life on both universes. So it was up to Polaris and Magneto to team up and use their powers to hold both Earths apart from one another while fighting Sentinels. If this version of Polaris shows up in the MCU, like, who can stop her? In at number 7, Namor. The King of Atlantis is in fact not just a merman, but he's also a mutant. The first mutant in fact, if you want to believe the title of his 2010 solo run. Namor, the Submariner, is an Atlantean human mutant hybrid, and has all the powers of an Atlantean. Aquatic adaptation, hydrokinesis, telepathic control over marine life, but he also has his mutant abilities of super speed, strength, flight, agility, and mild invulnerability. And the cherry on top, his lifespan is far longer than that of regular humans, and has been in the prime of his life for like the last 100 years or so. With all these things combined, Namor has been a force to be reckoned with in Marvel Comics since his inception, and has gone toe to toe with some of Marvel's biggest villains, and lived to tell the tale. There was also that one time where he joined Thanos' cabal, murdered countless heroes from alternate Earths with his bare hands, but he doesn't really like to talk about that. In at 6, Ava Bell. Ava Bell, aka Tempest, was one of Cyclops' X-Men revolutionaries during a time in comics where nobody really knew what they wanted to do with the X-Men. Was Cyclops a good guy? Was he the new Magneto? Nobody knew. It was weird, but what wasn't weird was how awesome Tempest was. Tempest is able to manipulate time within bubbles. She could just make them out of thin air. In short, she can create a time bubble, and then time within said bubble can be manipulated at her command. Everything outside the bubble moves normally, while everything inside the bubble can be slowed down to a standstill for exactly 60 seconds. Once, under extreme stress, she time traveled to the year 2099, trained with the Sorcerer Supreme, and then came back to the current timeline with a far greater understanding of her powers. Her powers are pretty ridiculous if you ask me. And at number 5, Cable. Many of you pointed out that the last list was essentially a Summers family reunion, which you weren't wrong, but there was one really important Summers boy missing, and that was Cable. Nathan Summers is one of the most powerful mutants in existence when left unchecked. He's the biological son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, a clone of Jean Grey. If you've seen Deadpool 2, then you've only gotten a small glimpse of what Cable is actually capable of. Cable's powers are telepathy and telekinesis, but they're severely handicapped by his techno-organic virus in his body. He has to use the majority of his awesome power just to keep it contained to one side of his body. If he didn't do this, he'd die. However, there was one time in particular where Cable was able to cut loose and use all his power. In the series Cable and Deadpool, Cable once held an entire island in the air with one hand, fought the X-Men and the Silver Surfer with his other hand. I'd like to see Josh Brolin pull that one off in Deadpool 3. And at number 4, Triage. Christopher Muse is another of Cyclops' aforementioned X-Men revolutionaries, and his powers are pretty ridiculous. In short, he can heal people just by touching them. Well, it seems simple enough, right? Well, it gets a little more complicated the more you look into what he's doing over time. Initially, Triage is only able to heal things like broken bones, cuts, bruises. However, later on in the comics, he becomes so powerful that he can actually bring the recently deceased back to life. He even managed to bring himself back to life after being stabbed in the neck by Wolverine and Mystique's alternate universe son. Yeah, that was a thing that happened. In at number 3, Matthew Malloy. This guy had a very brief appearance in the comics, but oh, what an appearance. Matthew Malloy witnessed the death of his wife during the Skrull invasion of Earth, and was left horribly traumatized by the event, as anyone would. Years later, he met up with his former sister-in-law, and this reminder of his former life was the breaking point for his psyche. His mutant powers emerged and vaporized everything around him, including said former sister-in-law. S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up to detain him, he blows up S.H.I.E.L.D. X-Men shows up to talk him down, they get blown up, and Matthew rewrites the laws of physics and reassembles himself. When he goes to the X-Mansion to ask for help, he accidentally kills more X-Men. The only way they were able to stop this guy was by going back in time and preventing his parents from ever meeting. If that's not powerful, I don't know what is. In at number 2, Colossus Juggernaut. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How can Colossus Juggernaut be higher on this list than Matthew Malloy, a man who can literally bend space and time to his will? Well, in short, it's my list, and I want to talk about Colossus Juggernaut at number 2. Let me know down in the comments if you've ever used your own great power to manipulate things to your own benefit. Anyways, Peter Rasputin is a giant, metal Russian man who punches things until they stop moving. The Juggernaut is an unstoppable avatar of the interdimensional demon Sidorak, a giant mammoth of a man who cannot be stopped once he starts building momentum. What happens when you combine these two things together? You get Colossus Juggernaut, one of the coolest amalgams ever created by Marvel. Oh yeah, and he's canon. Suck it, Iron Hammer. Anyways, this guy's power level far exceeds that of 9,000, and he once fought against the previous Juggernaut, Kane Marco, after having his skull split in half. Metal. And in at number 1, Old Man Phoenix. Jason Aaron's run on Thor might be the greatest Thor story ever told. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend you get to it ASAP. It's amazing. He covers pre-worthy Thor from mythology, lovable current-day Thor, God of Thunder, and a future version of Thor where he's become the All-Father and basically Odin with a hammer. In the old Thor universe, we follow Thor as he flies through a dying universe trying to find a way to save it. Who does he run into? Well, Wolverine, the last mutant in existence, and he's possessed by the Phoenix Force. Think about it. Logan's healing factor, upgraded by all the power of the entire Phoenix Force. He is so powerful, he was burnt into a skeleton and still kept fighting. The only reason he died was because he fused himself into Mjolnir to give his powers to Thor. Absolute unit.
And at number 10, Elixir. Elixir, aka Josh Foley, first appeared in 2003 in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 5. Funny enough, he was initially a member of an anti-mutant group called the Reavers, until his powers manifested and he's kicked out of the group, causing him to reluctantly join the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning after his parents also kick him out of his home. Speaking of his powers, Elixir is able to control the biological structure of any organic matter, which also includes his own body, as long as he is in proximity of his target. This means he can do things like heal others, restore and boost mutant powers, create painful and life-threatening ailments, like boils, welts, and even fatal tumors, cure the legacy virus, and even cause death. He can sense when people are sick or if there are any abnormalities in their body. He can also regenerate on a cellular level, and resurrect himself, meaning he is pretty much immortal. And at number 9, Vulcan. Initially introduced in 2006 in X-Men Deadly Genesis Issue 1, Vulcan, aka Gabriel Summers, is the younger brother of Cyclops and Havoc. While he's known more so for being a supervillain, the character once upon a time was part of the X-Men team. Energy is Vulcan's jam. He can psionically manipulate, transform, control, and absorb vast amounts of energy, including energy on the electromagnetic spectrum and from exotic sources, such as Cyclops' optic blasts, or even magically created energy. He can even tap into and suppress mutant energies if he'd like, and can produce light, heat, force, you name it. This also allows him to fly and survive in space. And at number 8, Kid Omega, aka Quentin Quire. Quentin Quire first appeared in New X-Men issue 134 back in 2003, joining the Xavier Institute. He quickly became one of Xavier's most favored students, with the professor attempting to help him control his powers. But Quentin takes a bit of a turn for the worse when he decides to start up the Omega Gang, a group of teenage mutants whose goal it was to exact revenge for the death of a famous mutant fashion designer. That, and he is super depressed about a girl not liking him back, and the fact that he was adopted. Dude has fragile self-esteem. Anywho, what can he do? Well, he has advanced precognitive and telepathic abilities that not only allow him to think at immense speeds, but to manipulate the minds of others, resist mind probes, and he can psychically influence a large group of people at one time. He's even created an entire universe in his mind that he calls the Construct that he can imprison people within. Minus his previous gang shenanigans, Quentin generally acts in the interest of good, having recently recently been featured a member of the Fresh Start iteration of the West Coast Avengers. In at 7, Magic, aka Ilyana Rasputina. Magic is the younger sister of Colossus, and first debuted in Giant Size X-Men issue 1 back in 1975. Now despite that, her character was merely a background character for the most part, and it wasn't until 8 years later that she was given a proper name in the Uncanny X-Men issue 160 in 1982, after aging 7 years in the paranormal dimension of Limbo, where she gained her mutant abilities. This includes interdimensional teleportation, magic manipulation, and the use of something called Soul Sword, which is something created by her own life force energy, a physical sword that with each use becomes more powerful. She can also manifest eldritch armor. During her time in Limbo, Magic became the sorceress supreme of that dimension, able to cast a plethora of spells using a mix of black magic and white magic, being taught the latter by an alternate universe version of Storm. She's also capable of creating powerful mind-blocking shields, keeping the likes of some of the strongest telepathic mutants out of her head, including Professor X. In at number 6, X-Man Nate Gray. Scott Summers and Jean Grey are responsible for some of the most powerful offspring in the mutant community, regardless of whether or not they actually intended to parent them. It's worth noting that Nate Gray is not Cable. Both characters are descendants of genetic material from Scott Summers and Jean Grey, but came to be in different manners, with Nate being grown in a laboratory in an alternate dimension thanks to Mr. Sinister, who used Scott and Jean's DNA to do so. Cable, on the other hand, is the son of Scott and Madeline Pryor, who is the clone of Jean Grey. Anywho, with that out of the way, let's talk about Nate. He has the ability to tap into the enormous psychic resources found in the astral plane, which allows him to manipulate matter and energy. His powers were diminished though by the Omega Machine. He's a character whose powers sometimes inflate and sometimes are taken away in the comics. He can also exist as living psychic energy, existing outside of his corporeal form. He was given his own solo series during Age of Apocalypse that briefly replaced Cable's series, and his series ended up running until 2001 as he was brought into the Earth 616 continuity, with it ending with his seemingly sacrificial death after struggling for years with being the most powerful person in a reality in which he did not belong. How tragic. Speaking of Scott and Jean's offspring, in at number 5, Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers was created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, first appearing in the Uncanny X-Men issue 141 back in 1981. But she didn't become Rachel Summers until after her debut, thanks to retcons. Gotta love a retcon. From an alternate future, she's the daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, the sister of Nate Grey, and a half-sister of Cable's. And she's hella strong. Not only has she had the Phoenix Force's abilities, she's also an empath, telepathic, telekinetic, and can astral project. She has limited time manipulation abilities too, and her telekinesis abilities can remotely manipulate matter, including on a subatomic level. And at number 4, Legion, aka David Haller. Legion, also known as David Charles Haller, is the son of Professor Charles Xavier. He traveled 20 years into the past in order to kill Magneto before his father's nemesis had the chance to amass power. But before he could, he ended up killing his father instead, which caused the Age of Apocalypse timeline to occur. Legion is often depicted as an anti-hero, and is known for his severe dissociative identity disorder, which formed after his mutant powers manifested during a terrorist attack in which he ended up absorbing the mind of the terrorist leader into his own. Because of his trauma, parts of David's personality splinter, each controlling a different aspect of his powers. Speaking of powers, why is he so strong aside from his parentage? Well, he can reality warp, he can shapeshift, he can manipulate matter, and is capable of transmutation. He can manipulate energy, he's telepathic, telekinetic, he can teleport, and of course, he can time travel. But because of his severe dissociative identity disorder in later story arcs, he's often sedated or hospitalized. Reed Richards, Madison Jeffries, and Dr. Nemesis would later create something called a neutral switchboard wristband that would help him control his multiple personalities and better manage his powers. And in X-Men Legacy, he ended up erasing himself from existence altogether, but even that didn't fully work out for him. Poor Legion. And at number 3, Hope Summers. Hope Summers first appeared in X-Men issue 205 in 2007 as part of the X-Men Messiah Complex storyline. After Decimation, a story event in which Scarlet Witch used her powers to turn all of the mutants into regular depowered humans, Hope was the first mutant to be born, which starts a hunt for the character. She's saved by Cable, who names her after her adopted mother who looked after the child with him, and Summers technically being Cable's last name. Hope is a vessel of the Phoenix Force, and has unspecified limits when it comes to physically manipulating and mimicking the powers of other mutants. So yeah, in the scope of things that could be super deadly later on down the line when mutant characters have been established in the MCU. Hope's mimicry abilities allow her to use those mutant powers at their utmost capacity, but because of this, she is potentially incredibly dangerous to people and the environment around her due to the massive amounts of power levels that she generates. Talk about a walking bomb. And at number 2, Jean Grey. Let's be honest here, Jean Grey is 100% going to be added to the MCU. It's almost inevitable. But the chances that we'll be seeing the Phoenix Force flexing its OP-ness on the big screen are pretty slim, at least for now. If anything, since the Phoenix Force is a major part of the X-Men stories, we think that if Jean does become the Phoenix, it'll be an event that's built up over time in the MCU, similar to what was done with the Infinity Gauntlet story arc. So really, Jean's Phoenix is just too strong for the MCU right now, but who knows what the future will hold. Regardless, she is OP as hell. And finally, in at number 1, Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is the son of Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards and Invisible Woman Sue Storm. And he's one incredibly powerful kid, that's for damn sure. First introduced in 1968 in Fantastic Four Annual Issue 6, Franklin is way beyond an Omega level mutant, having vast reality manipulating powers along with psionic powers. This means he can manipulate matter and energy on a cosmic scale, project energy, is capable of telekinesis, telepathy, astral projection, and precognition. He can teleport, and these two things are great. He's immortal and can create pocket universes. The kid can create his own damn universes. Celestials consider him to be on par with them, and his powers only increase the older he gets. So yeah, I'm sure we'd all love to see what Marvel Studios would do with a character like that. And to be fair, we're sure Franklin Richards is far from being up on the silver screen. The MCU still needs to establish his parents first. And some people have theorized that that won't happen until after Phase 5, so long way to go, friends. Long way to go.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Wolverine. Wolverine has had a pretty crazy past, so it's no surprise he's gone down a few dark roads. In the movie Logan, we see two Wolverines battling it out, and it's glorious and it's gory. It's so gory. In Age of Apocalypse, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horsemen of Death. It's a great comic. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine square up against Sabretooth in order to see who becomes the new Horseman. Wolverine, of course, came out on top, and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Quite the deal if you ask me. And to make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a scroll so the X-Men wouldn't notice. So there's a few comics here that could blend nicely into the MCU, like Apocalypse replacing Wolverine with a scroll. This is totally possible, with Ryan Reynolds confirming that the next Deadpool would have included Logan on this road trip. That plus the fact that they're best friends in real life. I mean, Adam Sandler has like 15 of his friends in every movie, so I'm sure they're planning to bring Logan in with Deadpool in that deal in some way, shape, or form. Would it be Apocalypse making him evil? Probably not, but never say never. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be so helpful. It helps our channel out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Tap that thumbs up. Let's keep this video going. Number 9, Pyro. Pyro was once a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And in X-Men 2, we see him hanging out with Iceman and Rogue. He's having a great time just hanging out with some super students. But by the end of the movie, he switches over to Magneto's side, facing off against Bobby. In the comics, St. John Allardyce made his first appearance as Pyro in X-Men 141. He was born and raised in Australia, and his powers, well, as you could probably guess, has something to do with fire. When he was young, he met Mystique, and then he ended up joining her new brotherhood of evil mutants. We need more fire bad guys, plain and simple. We have none in the MCU. I mean, we had some kind of with Spider-Man Far From Home, but that was all just Mysterio being Mysterio. Number 8, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness. Spawned, of course, by the first Nightmare. Amal Farouk was the leader of an underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter of Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happened to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him, and it's pretty terrifying. He feeds on the shadows of your soul. So yeah, with Marvel now veering off to the cosmic side of things, I think we can get a Shadow King behind the scenes secretly just sucking the life out of our world's finest. In the comics before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. So maybe this guy's been here the whole time and he's just been lurking in the shadows. We just don't know it yet. I mean, he is the Shadow King. We're not going to really see him. He's here right now. He's been here the whole time. Number 7, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. That cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak. So Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, read the inscription, and possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. And then an explosion went off and Kane the Juggernaut was trapped under the rubble and Xavier took off. He got out of there. So after Kane dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village with the previous man who had held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, getting taken out as well. I mean, we've literally seen him rip Deadpool in half, and if Deadpool's coming to the MCU, I really hope Juggernaut will as well. After all, last time we saw him in Deadpool 2 at the end of the movie, he was crawling out of that pool. He wasn't actually dead. He was just a little bit injured after Colossus laid him out with the help of some well-placed wires. Number 6, Strife. Making his debut in New Mutants issue 87, Strife was the clone of Nathan Summers, the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, Cable. So we just saw Cable as a new main character slash villain in Deadpool 2, and he was played by Josh Brolin. So I don't think he'll be coming to the MCU. Or at least if he does, they may have to do it with this way, with Strife. That way they can bend the original story and use alternate futures however they please, with the character more or less staying true to the comics. He's a clone of Cable from the future. He has this bad armor, he's a telepathic and telekinetic mutant, and Cable, who has devoted his psionic powers to basically ensure that this techno-organic virus doesn't get his right side as well, Strife doesn't need to worry about that, so he's OP. He's an OG who is OP. The MCU could for sure use Strife. The timelines are getting quite intricate, so it can be explainable, and we'll buy it. If Strife comes in, we'll definitely buy it. Number 5, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. And he's not that easy to forget once you take one look at him. So in a world where Sword was taking out Vision and Hydra's doing tests to make mutants in their secret labs, I totally think Mr. Sinister could show up with the X-Men in the MCU. After all, he's obsessed with experimenting on mutants, including himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but he felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. So that doesn't say anything. You're like, okay, this guy's messed. He couldn't get the funding from the Hellfire Club or, Kickstarter, who wasn't around. So he got together a group that he named Marauders, and then he got them to kidnap people off the streets of London so he can experiment on them himself. He even tried to experiment on his son, who wasn't even alive. So yeah, he's a villain who likes to bring the dead back. So hey, we could always use one of those, for sure. Number 4, Dark Phoenix. Jean Grey is an Omega level mutant born with telekinetic and telepathic powers. Seeing the potential in Jean's strength, the Phoenix Force attached itself to her while she was in danger during a space mission with the Fantastic Four. I mean, come on guys, it's X-Men 101. Literally, the issue you can find this in is X-Men 101. I am Phoenix. Boom. Okay, so this dark, powerful cosmic force started to change her for the worse. She ended up destroying a solar system that killed like billions of people. We just finished watching Wanda have the breakdown of a century every Friday for weeks, so we'll gladly watch Jean Grey deal with the Phoenix Force in a similar fashion. Totally. Now, with the fact that Jean Grey wasn't the one to do these evil acts and she was being used as a vessel, rings a bit too close to Wanda's story, but never say never. Number 3, Apocalypse. Making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue 17, it's undeniable how intimidating this Omega level mutant is. This guy is loaded with powers. He can suck the energy from you. Apocalypse can suck the energy out of anything and then use that power to shoot energy blasts or use that power to enhance his own strength and speed. Okay, not a bad start. We could definitely use someone like that in the MCU. And just by looking at Apocalypse, you can see that he's merged with celestial technology. His armor is futuristic, it's fun. This technology is wired throughout his body and also his headquarters, making Apocalypse able to teleport at times. Self-molecular manipulation allows for him to alter his physical form. He can get big, he can get small, whatever the case. He's also a super genius, especially when it comes to advanced technology, that stuff that I mentioned earlier. Even before being modified by the celestial ship, Apocalypse was already living for thousands of years. He just goes into a coma and then heals up. I mean, talk about a beauty sleep, damn. In X-Men Age of Apocalypse from 1995, we see just how big and bad this guy can get. Oscar Isaac had a take on him in X-Men Apocalypse and it was great, that was super fun. Not as scary or big as the comics, but still a good time. So if Marvel needs a new big bad guy besides Kang, I think they should go here next. We love superhero teams fighting big bald guys. I mean, we can't get enough of it. Evidently, we'll pay to see it numerous times. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff, she's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Ralph Boner, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did join the Avengers as well, of course. She's one of Marvel's biggest heroes and she's trending every single Friday for a reason. And then in Marvel's M Day, she kind of became the ultimate evil when she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. That large number being 986,618, give or take. Only leaving a couple hundred left on the planet. WandaVision was great because we finally got to see this Scarlet Witch. We saw this villain side to her. And I'd be happy to see more at any time, especially with more mutants now on the way. And number 1, Magneto. Of course, number 1, this is the most ideal scenario. I'd love for this to happen. He made his first appearance in X-Men 1 back in 1963. Magneto is a mutant with the ability to generate and control magnetic fields. He's a master of magnetism. He was a close friend with Professor X, but of course they came to a few disagreements over the idea that humans and mutants could coexist peacefully. And his horrible childhood makes a pretty fair point for said argument. He created the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Acolytes, and he worked with the X-Men before. When Professor X needed to leave Earth, Magneto stepped in to take his place and continued to teach his students how to use their powers. After this, he became a hero in a way, guiding the New Mutants, but again, he's one of those guys that constantly flips back and forth in the comics. And for a while, fans, including myself, were hoping that Magneto was going to be the one behind WandaVision's madness somehow, or he would come in from another universe and then explain to Wanda what's going on and be the bearer of bad news almost. I think Magneto should still be one of the first mutants introduced, especially if they go Ultimate Magneto, because he actually takes out Xavier in those comics, and also thousands of people as well. So there's that. He would be a cool villain to come over, definitely.